Oh, that's how it looks like. Hi, this is Iszuddin Ismail, and I think it's a lot easier if people call me Dino. It's a lot easier to pronounce. And we are on the RunCloud show, where we talk to PHP programmers from around the world, trying to find out what they do with PHP, the things that they build, the things that they do before PHP, and maybe a little bit more things about they do when they're not doing programming on PHP. And today we have here with us is Franz Maruna.
Hello.
Oh, there you go. And also Andrew Embler.
Hey there.
Now these guys are from the Portland Labs, which is the creators of Concrete5, which is kind of like a really popular content management system. You guys don't know it. I think back in the days, I believe that it is Concrete5 when it comes to content management system. What I see is like Concrete5 is kind of like the pioneer that does this live editing on the front end of the website itself, whereby back in the days people do content management system, you see the front end and then you log into the back end and start putting in content, doing editing and whatnot. But with Concrete5, you can start to edit content in the front end itself. So I think that is one of the unique things about Concrete5, where they kind of like pioneered that before anybody else does that. So I think we're going to talk with Andrew and with Franz about how it all started. I guess, how about we do this? Let's talk about way in the beginning, before you guys did Concrete5. What were you guys doing? A bit of background and anything like that. Would that be fine?
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the kind words. Dino, you're right. Like we started with the idea of in-context editing way back with the first version of Concrete, which was just Concrete CMS, and it was 2003, and we were running a full-service interactive media agency. So if you could click on it, we could build it. And we had worked with a lot of different CMSs, and some of them were right for different size gigs, but we ran into an opportunity with the Ad Council to build a website in about 2.5 months for the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial, which is a big deal out here in Portland, Oregon, because of the Oregon Trail and all that. And they had a lot of stakeholders on every call. They had it was a kind of passion project for all of them, and so everybody kind of wanted to change things as they went. And we knew that a traditional content management system where you really had to rope people into technical requirements and kind of be honest to those during a build cycle would just not work for this project. So we sat down and we architected something that was much more modular. We wanted something that you could really move things around within the page very easily. So even during a call, we could take the calendar that was in the sidebar and put it in the main content space and vice versa. And you're right, we knew that the idea of in-context editing, like just being able to treat your website like a word processor, was going to be really valuable to the clients that we were delivering it to. So, we kind of started with that, and Andy, locked himself in the basement and started coding away, and we were able to launch that site on time, and it stayed up during national TV spots, and we just kind of kept adding to it, and had a content management system for our agency that we just used as our own special sauce for about 5 years. And in 2008, we released it as open source, called Concrete5. It was the 5th major rebuild, and things took off from there.
Okay. So from what I understand, you built Concrete5 when you got kind of like a job with the client. So it was built
just to follow up on what Franz said. Thank you for this opportunity. And I think you'll find that's the case for a lot of tools that come out in open source and otherwise. You kind of build them to scratch your own itch first, and then they kind of turns out other people have the same problems, and so you can they mature that way.
Oh, all right. Yeah, because some people build it separately and not to be delivered directly for a client, you see. So, but in your case, it was built specifically, initially, it was built specifically for one client, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I think we knew at that point that we wanted to make decisions that weren't specifically just for that one project. We wanted to think a little bit bigger than just that one client, but it definitely was created specifically for one project at the very beginning.
All right. How about this? How far along? I suppose you've been running Portland Labs long way before Concrete5. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, before Concrete5 started in late 2000, and you know, we were just an interactive shop, so we did a lot of Flash development in those days, ActionScript stuff. We've always been working in PHP. You know, back then it was version 3. That's when I stopped working in PHP.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty quickly, you know, we realized that all of the other CMSs that we were dealing with had some pretty big learning curves and limitations that we didn't like. So, you know, kind of having a client with needs and building for that, but then adding a process at the end where you kind of like, okay, what were the good lessons and the bad lessons, and let's take the code base out and kind of you know, build ourselves some tools we can reuse. That's how I was always taught good developers worked, right? You work on your own library, and then, you know, now you've got a library of functions that you can use on that project. So, you know, I think it's really just that, you know, scale.
Yeah, we did start with PHP prior to Concrete5, and that was just because it was the easiest language and the most sort of functional language to get started with in web development at the time. And so it made sense to build Concrete in PHP, and we've just kind of grown as developers as PHP's grown as a language.
So Concrete5 started in 2008.
Yeah, so what Franz is talking about is sort of the first versions of Concrete before it even had a name. This was in 2003.
Oh,
and
wow.
when and then in 2008, the fifth major rebuild of Concrete5. That's why we chose 5 as the name, Concrete5. And then that was when we open sourced. But yeah, it had been around and mature and used internally as commercial software for 5 years prior to that.
So when did you guys form Portland Labs?
Portland Labs started in late 2001.
So 2001 and 2003, that's the first Concrete. So 2008, you have Concrete5.
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. 2001, PHP 3, yeah, I guess that's right. That's about right. Okay, how about this? Can the both of you share a little bit about your personal background? What have you guys been doing before Portland Labs? Maybe about where you go to school, or?
Yeah, I'll go first. I went to the University of Oregon from '97 to 2001, and about the same time I started getting really into web development because the web was hot and interesting and new at that point. And so started with HTML and CSS and just sort of basic web technologies, and learned pretty quickly that you kind of have to make a choice to either specialize in design or get into more back-end programming. And the programming had always appealed to me. And so started working on PHP around 2000, databases, stuff like that. And it was around that time that I met Franz, actually, on a web consulting gig, not PHP-based, working for somebody else. And we did some work helping to migrate this site, a very large legacy site, together, and worked really well together. And that was kind of when we started working together, 2000, 2001.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you, Franz?
I grew up with computers. My dad ran a manufacturing software company, so I was programming when I was a kid and just kind of surrounded by gear. I dropped out of college in '95 to go build websites because I had I was kind of pursuing a major in the arts, but I knew how to code, and it just seemed like a really good combination of those skills. So I worked my way across the country and just kind of freelanced in every role you can do in the web dev process, and was working at a big company that became Fujitsu Consulting out here in Portland when the dot-com economy collapsed back in 2000, I guess, 99, 2000. And that's when I started this shop and hired Andy out of college, and we've been coding away ever since.
So the main people in Portland Labs are you two guys, or is there any other founders, so to say?
Well, Andy and I have been working together for a long time. So yeah, we are the co-founders. There's some other people in Portland Labs, some really bright people on our team. Corvin Santo is a pretty active PHP developer in the Fig group, and you might want to set up another interview with him as well as you get into more kind of where PHP is heading, because he's definitely got some strong passions about it.
Yeah, he is active in its ongoing development.
If I may ask, are you guys married with kids or anything like that?
We're not married to each other. Yes, we both have kids.
Yeah, so we shouldn't like.
We both have kids.
That a lot better.
It's all right.
Yeah, we both are married. We both have kids. I have a 3-year-old, and Franz has. Oh, how old are they now?
11 and 8, 2 little girls.
11 and 8, awesome.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, so mine are 12, 8, and 4. Yeah,
girls and boys?
It's a girl, boy, boy.
Okay.
Yeah, quite like a handful though.
Yeah.
Three little ones.
So how was it? I suppose you guys got into Portland Labs first, and then you start building a family. So do you think those kind of like changed about how you work and how you do stuff when it comes to the business?
Yes.
Absolutely. Having only had a kid for 3 years, it's interesting because a lot of work has been done in Concrete5 and Portland Labs prior to having kids. So it definitely, for me, it's definitely changed the way I work. I'm lucky enough to be pretty productive when I'm early in the morning, which is good because a lot of times kids have you up early in the morning, and I don't mind working at 5 a.m. But yeah, you definitely don't get as much uninterrupted thoughts. You don't get as much uninterrupted time to sort of deal with large, complex problems, and especially since we work remotely. It's a balance.
Yeah, it's true. I used to be able to stay up until like 3 in the morning. Once you get focused on something, it's like I'm just going to finish it, and just get lost in some task. And those days are long gone. I think on the other side, though, for me, there's a lot of stuff we used to do that was not particularly helpful for the business at all. When we back in 2007, before we went open source, we were running an art gallery out of our studio because it was fun and it was a marketing tool. We'll have these first Thursday art parties and we'll bring down account managers from different businesses we might want to work with and show off some local artists' work. And it was cool. It was definitely fun, but we never made any money at it. And it was a total distraction. We weren't building websites or, it was a passion project. And we have had a lot of passion projects over the years that are oh, this would be awesome. We would like this. I grew up running bulletin board systems online. And so I've always, it's easy for me to get sidetracked into, hey, this is technology that lets people communicate, and that's worthwhile, so we should build a lot of it. And I think, for me at least, having kids and really having them grow up to a certain point, getting them, seeing that they're little people, and it helps you focus on, let's make this business work, and maybe not so much with the art studio.
But from the event that you do, from the art studio, art gallery, did it not bring any accounts, any new clients?
I mean, yeah, I'm sure it impacted our ability to keep certain clients happy. I don't regret doing it. It was fun. But I guess as you get older and you have kids, you start to kind of make lists of what's important and what's just a should or a could. And I don't know. I find it to be a nice experience to be able to really focus on, look, we're building this product for these clients. We're going to do that, and then we're going to go home and play with our kids. We're not going to stay here and help some artist figure out wall hangers. That's cool too. Like when I was in my 20s, early 30s, that makes sense. But I don't know, having kids has been a gift that way. It kind of gives you focus that you might have not had just because you're a creative person. You bounce around a lot,
All right. There's this one thing that question I have in my mind. So you guys started in 2001, 2003 you have Concrete, and then 2005 you guys decided to open source it. Why?
Well, it was 2008 that we went open source. So we had been working for about 5 years, and we would basically we'd close a client and we would license them our CMS because that's what we wanted to work with, and we would kind of keep the code that we liked and threw the code out that we didn't. So it was a pretty nice place to be from a development standpoint. We didn't really have to worry about keeping hundreds of thousands of old installs up to date or a migration path for old work. It was just kind of like, our secret sauce came with our projects. And I guess in those days, Facebook was still just for college students. MySpace was kind of the big social network, and everybody knew that there was something happening there. Like it was clear that like people need more than just email. And so from like 2005 to 2007, our clients were typically angel investors that wanted to build some targeted social network. So we want an online community for musicians, or we want MySpace but for soccer moms, and they would have a chunk of change, and they'd need us to build an initial version of this, their take on an online community, which we'd be able to do in Concrete. And then they would go raise money and go down the venture capital route. So we got to see a fair amount of how that industry worked and launched some cool projects. By 2008, that whole thing kind of started to fall apart because a lot of these angel investors were abusing money out of the housing market, and all that money went away. So we saw in the year before, we had half a dozen clients that were all planning on spending 6 figures with us each. And, as 2008 kind of slowly emerged, every one of them was like, well, maybe half of that, maybe half of that again, and turns out we're out of business. So it wasn't, it was, I'd love to say it was like some strategic, brilliant move to go open source, but I think the reality is that we knew we had a cool CMS that, Dino, like you say, our in-context editing was, nobody else was really doing anything like that at the time. Like Squarespace wasn't really out. There was Weebly and Wix were like still weird Flash apps. So like we knew, particularly for open source, we had something that nobody else did. And I didn't have anyone who wanted to stick it on SourceForge and see what happens. It was before GitHub. So we put it on SourceForge and made a Hello World
SourceForge
site. And within 3 months, we were a project of the month on SourceForge, and things just took off. So, I think a lot of things with open source are that way. It's kind of like you had this vision, the vision changed, and you've got something that is good, but you need other people to kind of buy into where you're going and help kind of direct that vision and say, no, this is great for me in this way, and this is great for me in that way. So it's been really cool to be part of something larger that way.
Yeah, in the beginning, we were obsessively checking SourceForge's forums and everything for, just the next people who downloaded it, and we're talking like getting excited at 50 downloads a day or something like that. And then when people are having trouble with it, they're posting questions, and we respond to them within 5 minutes and fixing problems, just because that's kind of what you need to do when you're sort of bootstrapping something off the ground, getting from 0 users to 5,000 or however many. And I just remember it was always very exciting to see new people using it that you didn't even know how they got turned on to it, and then people I don't know. It was cool to see people starting to translate our software into different languages, and now it's available in like at least 20 languages, and
Wow.
that's very cool to see it spread across the globe.
Oh, all right. Okay, right now when I started to see Concrete5, I have one website with Concrete5, and I start to see that you have this marketplace. So my assumption is like this is how you fund your open source project. So it's kind of like your business model with Concrete5. I really like that. But was it there from the very beginning, or when you open sourced Concrete5, did you have any business model in mind?
No, it was not there from the very beginning. Yeah, we knew we wanted to do a good marketplace. So, at the time, we had, we as a shop had been asked to work on Drupal projects. And, we had found that, like, I couldn't even really tell a client how long something was going to take in Drupal until I spent, a week of one of my developers' times poking around in it. Because all the different modules that you could get really just changed how the platform worked, which was really flexible and cool, but it left me as like another contractor really having no idea if my team could get involved in there and be able to help at all. And then we had a similar experience with WordPress, where it's like some of these add-ons don't even work and like they just brick your site. So we thought that like we could make a real competitive difference by saying, look, in our marketplace, everything will be tested, everything will work, it'll come with support, or you get your money back. It's it's more like the App Store from Apple than just kind of a Wild West.
And it was commercial. That was new to PHP land.
That's true. People did not. That was we ruffled some feathers by saying, no, we're going to sell stuff in here. Like, it's not all just going to be free. Because I think at that time, WordPress's marketplace was all free, and there was Ubuntu's theme forest, and that kind of stuff was just emerging. But yeah, the general, and those platforms are both GPL, and so there was always some kind of ambiguity around, well, if I try to sell an add-on, like, do I have to give it away too? Like, that's kind of weird, and we didn't like that. We're like, look, we've made good money with our framework. We're giving it away because we'd like to see some more opportunities and other people to use it. So we picked the MIT license very consciously because it's simple. And if you want to go build a startup with Concrete5 and call it Cement 6 and compete with us, like, more power to you. Like, good luck. And that's just always kind of been our philosophy with it. And I think that let us do the marketplace. And really kind of embrace the idea that, like, yeah, people deserve to make a buck off of their work. There's free stuff in there as well. It's about half and half at this point. But there's some really good add-ons that, have been a key part of quite a few people's annual income. And, I'm pretty proud that, our ecosystem isn't just people contributing free code, but like people are really building businesses around what we've made together. So it's been pretty cool.
So so the marketplace was not there from the very beginning. So when did you guys start the marketplace?
2009, 2010?
Yeah, about a year into it, I think.
Oh yeah, all right.
Something like that.
So we built, it's all built with Concrete5 too. So we launched it, we got a couple versions out so it was, really stable and happy. And then pretty quickly we started working on the marketplace. And then we launched it. It was just our add-ons in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the very beginning.
A couple months where it was just like we were selling a couple of add-ons, and then people started to buy into it, and it grew from there.
All right. So I think there was some major changes with Concrete5, whereby I think the version 5.7 was it?
Yeah.
Where and there's you don't have backward compatibility and all for that. So why was that?
Oh, good question.
Well, we had maintained it for a long time.
I suppose I think I want to say is that something major happened. So what was that thing, and why was the decision with no backward compatibility and stuff like that?
Yeah, so yeah, like you mentioned, from the first version of Concrete5 all the way to the 6th major version of Concrete5, we'd had backward compatibility if you just upgraded along the way. And then we really found, with some of the changes that we wanted to introduce to the code base, we found that version 7 was going to be fairly major, not just in terms of new features that we were adding, but really we were changing some of the existing features to make them better in ways that were going to make it really difficult to upgrade, in terms of keeping everyone's data the same while upgrading the way that it worked under the hood. And then even harder than that, we basically restructured the entire code base to make it conform to more modern PHP coding standards. Mm-hmm. So we introduced support for PHP's namespaces was the big one, and kind of embraced a lot more of interoperability conventions between the different frameworks. So we started using Composer for all of our third-party libraries, and making sure Concrete5 works in Composer and things like that. And all of that, when we did it, really kind of meant that every add-on that you had would have to be rewritten in order to be namespaced. So with that in mind, we knew that we would never be able to just drop the existing code into an old site. Everything would break. Even if you didn't have any kind of customizations, if you had any kind of add-ons installed, you'd have problems. So we decided to rip the Band-Aid off there, and it was painful. And I think those types of migrations, usually they need to happen, but they are not to be taken lightly. We're now back on track and moving forward with backward compatible releases, and feel like we've made up more of the ground that we kind of lost in that transition. But it was a serious transition.
Yeah, I guess something like that has to be like a really, really big decision to make.
Yeah. Yeah, I think from what I've heard, Drupal did a similar thing in version 7 and version 8. Our version 8, which is just out now, has a lot of updates over version 7 as well, but it is backward compatible. So if you start in version 7, you can move on to 8 and into the future as well.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be doing that again anytime in the foreseeable future.
No, it was...
I think a lot of those decisions has probably because of how PHP is changing. Yeah, with Composer and namespacing, like you said. Yeah, so okay, when we get into that, what do you think about the new PHP 7 and everything else that's coming along that line?
I think it's great to see that kind of the innovation in the PHP space, just with simple stuff that they add over time. There were a number of years around PHP 5 that it was just, the project was moving pretty slowly, and there was a lot of gridlock in terms of were they going to go to PHP 6 and all this kind of stuff. And then just seems like in the last 5 years, it's moving at a great pace, and they're doing a lot of new stuff. I know that our hosting environment is now PHP 7 based. Mm-hmm. Performance updates alone are kind of the reason that I'm most excited about it. It just seems to run much faster, and Concrete5 is not a slim framework by any means, so it helps our application performance a lot. And yeah, we're pretty excited about it. Unfortunately, working with a framework that you want to make available as widely as possible, we just recently updated our requirements to be PHP 5.5.9 minimum requirements, just because we want to be available on as wide a variety of hosting setups as possible. So it's going to be a while before we can take advantage of PHP 7 features in the core, but some of our add-ons do, and so definitely some code customizations that we make internally use it, and we're pretty excited about it.
Anything to add, Franz?
I think it's great. I remember arguing for PHP in like the 90s when it was, we're going to build this all out of Java. And I was like, you're never going to get this project done. Like, oh no, Java's great. And it was always tough because you'd be going up against, in these discussions, it'd be some kind of CTO type that was really into frameworks and strictly object-oriented approaches. And you're like, yeah, I get that. I understand why that's appealing. But I can also tell you that like a large swath of the web is running on PHP, and you know, sure, maybe it's all a bunch of hacker sites and porn sites, but they're getting beaten up pretty hard, and it's all running just fine. Like, are you sure we can't use porn? And over the years, it's become more believable. You know, Facebook using it has often helped with those debates of like, yeah, Facebook uses it. What, you're bigger than Facebook? But seeing kind of the really that kind of people, it certainly is. We've seen a bigger barrier of entry for folks, like especially with early versions of Concrete5. I think it was really easy for people to kind of pick up and just kind of take a block that does this and kind of hack it away to make it do something else. And PHP's nature, I think, was pretty approved that way. And I think you get a little bit less of that these days. I think that it's more of a steep learning curve to get into PHP for someone picking it up today than certainly it was. I got into it because we were using server-side includes because we were tired of building everything out of HTML, and I really needed to be able to pass a parameter to a server-side include, and you couldn't. And I don't know, it was you, Andy, or someone was like, but there's this PHP thing we could use. I was like, yeah, that's great. But like, is it, are we using a ORM or object-oriented approaches was not a concern at all.
Right.
In 1999.
SSI. Yeah, I haven't heard that for a really long time. I don't think I've even used that thing.
Back then. It worked great. Your header and footer standard, you're good. All done. Super fast. So yeah, it's just growing up. It's it's PHP's turn to be a big boy.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've kind of grown up along as developers at the same time, because I remember enjoying to use PHP as opposed to Java, which I had to use as well, just because it was easier to get as a relatively young programmer, like 19, 20. Just it made more sense to me at the time. And I think you're right. The code is more maintainable now, and for us, it's a greater pleasure to use, and it's much more uniform across different add-ons and things like that, which is just kind of conventions and getting more experience under your belt. But you do sacrifice a little bit of that approachability when you do that. But it's kind of something that probably has to happen as something matures.
Okay. If we may get back into Concrete5, right? The way I see it, how Concrete5's support itself is through the marketplace, and that may also be for Portland Labs. But if I may ask, is there anything else to that? I mean, is that all that Portland Lab does?
No.
Or do you?
So yeah, the marketplace is actually a small part of what we do at this point. We do make money with the marketplace. We also do hosting for Concrete5 sites. So typically larger clients, but certainly any number of mid-sized businesses, and they like hosting with us because they get a single point of contact. So they can open a support ticket with us, and whether it's a configuration issue on the server or something that they need to do inside of Concrete5 or whatever, they're going to get a straight answer, and that's nice for a certain type of client. We also do support contracts. So for some folks, they're not interested in us hosting their web presence because they've got their own stack and it's complicated. But they do want us to be on call and kind of provide best practices advice and, be able to have a shared disaster recovery plan that if something goes wrong, we'll help them. And then we do a fair amount of development work as well. So we're not a full service agency anymore. We don't do any design or strategy. But if you've got something complicated that you're building in Concrete5, we've got bright people who are working on those types of things all the time on a project basis.
Okay, let's say if money is not a question. It's out of the way, out of the question. Would you prefer to work how it is now, where you mostly work with clients on technical stuff, on hosting, on development, or do you prefer to be a full agency like you used to?
Money's always the question, Dino. I am pretty happy not doing the creative stuff for other people, to be honest. Selling creative work is tough. It's always hard to price that. There's always somebody who is just as creative and younger and hungrier. There are times where it's like, it'd be nice to offer just a full service solution to some clients, but working with the right partners, it's really not a big deal. If you get well thought out designs and architectures from an agency, we're perfectly happy chopping somebody else's work there. Certainly I think there was a time when we were much younger where there was like, I don't know, like a pride thing in terms of like, well, I got to sell the client on this vision for this website, and it's not green enough. They really need to embrace the green. And I think as we've gotten older, we've just, we've done so many different projects that you look back at a few years later and you're like, oh, that needs to be rebuilt. That you start to. It's not that you don't care. It's more that you just start to see that like, what's popular today is going to be different 3 years from now, and again 3 years from now, and we want to stay engaged in doing the cool new stuff. So for us, that's more on the engineering side, and partnering with other folks that do the creative.
All right, nice. And Andrew, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's always this balance between wanting to kind of spend all of your time doing software development on your own products and making them available as either software as a service or just commercial software. And the idea is, if I could just do that full time and not have to do services and integration with actual clients and just sell the software, that would be perfect, because then I can spend all my time solving these interesting problems and never have to worry about these actual service problems. But I don't know. I think it's valuable that we still do work. We do actual services work with clients, just because if you kind of wall yourself away and just worry about your software problems, you might be solving problems that people aren't actually having. And it's nice to be able to work with, the clients that we're lucky enough to kind of get to pick and choose. Work with them, bright people who have problems, and make sure that our software is actually solving the problems that they have.
Nice. All right. Okay, I've come to know about Concrete5 Japan, guys. Okay, can you explain to me, to us, or to the audience later, about how does that work? What's the deal with Concrete5 Japan?
Katsuna-san is awesome. We're big in Japan. So thanks to Katz and Hissy, there's a really active community in Japan. So they are really our only official international partner. There are other websites that are built kind of, locally, and then they kind of come and go. But we have an ongoing partnership with the guys in Japan. They translate all the core, but they kind of have to tinker around with it a little bit to make it really work well in the Japanese market. So it's more than just a string translation. They kind of maintain their own version next to ours based on our framework. And they're great. They come to Portland every so often, and we have a good time with them.
They're very active with trade shows and things like that.
Much more all right.
They're very.
So is it just a community thing, or is there like any business arrangement around it? Because they do go around with the Concrete5 name and trademark.
Yeah. They are officially blessed by us. They are. They also are a small agency, and they provide services around Concrete5. And they're working with some big companies over there, building intranets and extranets and some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Okay. How about in in the near future, what can we expect with Concrete5?
Well, what we're working on now is a hosted software as a service, kind of headless CMS take on top of Concrete5. So it's called Liberta, and it's basically if you like the editing experience of Concrete5, but you want everything to just be delivered for you in a secure environment that you don't have to manage, then this is the solution for you. So it runs on top of Concrete5, same basic framework, but it adds a whole bunch of tools that right now we're working with the public sector. So this is for the U.S. Army, but larger companies as well are really looking for more of this type of solution, right? They don't want to be upgrading their own CMS and having to host it internally. They just want the thing to always work. They want a couple of different features that aren't in the open source core. So, as Andy was mentioning, as you actually are working with people, you start to get a better sense of what they need that your software doesn't do. And sometimes those things can kind of string together in interesting ways. So, like on the technical side, we're talking internally about a separate way to serve content, perhaps through JavaScript, that would be able to, for one client, power an ad network. So they need to swap out ads in a page, and we don't want to do that from within PHP because we like caching layers, and ads will keep you from doing that. So is there some way that we can go get an ad and kind of swap it out of the JavaScript layer on the client browser, but still pull that out of Concrete5 somehow? Then once you start thinking about that, and you're thinking, okay, if I've got Concrete5 here, and then like a JavaScript kind of lightweight Concrete5 I can hit over here, well then, could we do personalization with this? Could we do multivariant testing? If one client needs just ads on the side, and those swap out depending on who we are, how hard would it be to make a paragraph of marketing text swap out based on if you're a medical user or an agricultural user, which is the kind of thing that a lot of clients at the larger level are very interested in. So you start to find ways to kind of string things together, and there's one technical solution that could give us a number of feature benefits that way. But that's the type of thing that we're working on now, and you'll see in the coming year that start to emerge more as a product for the private sector as well.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of release schedule, we don't have any hard and fast dates for the next version of Concrete5, but I can say that it'll be 8.2, and it's in GitHub right now, and we're finishing up some bugs. There are no major feature updates on it that I think we're still worrying about. We've just got some multilingual bugs to iron out, but it has a fairly large, impressive list of features at this point since we've been working on it for a few months. So that should hopefully be out in the next couple months, and that will be required to run this Liberta software framework that Franz is talking about.
I think you'll also see more documentation and feature improvements on the Express stuff that we've built into version 8. So in between version 7 and 8, we added something that we call Express, and it's basically a way to make strongly typed objects on the back end that you can relate to one another. So, Concrete5 has always been very much about kind of in-page editing, and that works well for marketing content. But sometimes you've got stuff that just, it really deserves to have an object made for it. You're making a bunch of boats, and you want to put them in marinas. And this whole framework for Express lets you do that. So you can kind of build simple databases just through the front end. And it's kind of been a valuable thing that Concrete5 has been missing for a long time. And now it's in there in 8. People are starting to use it more. So I think you'll see a lot more. You'll see it maturing and more examples of how it can be used well, and more relationship types made, and all that kind of thing.
From what I can understand about Express, I have not been doing a lot of concrete. I did at one site, and I didn't do a lot of Concrete5 after that. But watching at your videos, I think those has been very helpful. And I think from what I understand, Express is whereby you can create your own custom content type. Yeah, something like if I'm doing an e-commerce, I can create a set of products.
Yep.
Or maybe if I am creating a blog, I can create a set of blog posts or something like that. So that's what it is, right?
Yeah, we found basically what we found is that we've had this concept of custom attributes for a long time, which is
Custom.
a way to add custom data to pages and files and users. And there's a very extensive system in there for making your own types of data for that. And it's been very flexible and helpful for people, but there's never been a really easy way to use that attribute flexibility on objects that you make yourself. So if you wanted to have custom attributes and make it easy to add data over time, you'd have to kind of bind those to pages. Or so you'd find people using pages for all sorts of stuff that they really shouldn't be used for just because it's so easy to add attributes to them. So what we did with Express was let you create a custom object and then put attributes against it and then relate those objects to each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, in Drupal idea, it really is like creating custom content types. And since we've been very focused on front end content since the beginning of Concrete5, we've kind of, we started thinking like you shouldn't need to do that because you should be able to do everything with your site from the page that you're on. And while that's true for a lot of things, there are some things that you want to treat more as database objects, and this is what that is for.
I think what's more interesting is that you can have relationships from one object to another. Yeah, I think that's really cool with Concrete5. All right, I think what some people who are not familiar with Concrete5, when I had a look at it again, what people do not realize about Concrete5 is how comprehensive it is. Like from the
It's an accurate term.
Absolutely. No, I mean, there are some content management. To have a basic installation of what Concrete5 has, you need to have this plugin and that plugin, this add-on and that add-on, and it doesn't come all complete. Like from when I look at Concrete5, you can just go to the settings and you see you have caching, you have really comprehensive user permissions and all that. And I think that's one of the really great features about what Concrete5 has. Well,
thanks, Dino.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, in which some are not aware of. So I think that's kind of like a shame, though.
Yeah, I think we've always taken that approach. If 90% of the audience would want this feature, then we should really figure out a way to cook it into the core. Open source has been really awesome to us, and we get a lot out of it. But I'm not sure that there's a tremendous advantage in having like dozens of different parties rethinking how permissions should. Like, we should sit down, make sure we've got it right, and then we can all rely on permissions working the same way. That I think there's strength in that decision-making process. However you may end up on any feature, sometimes it's like, nah, whatever. This doesn't need to be in the core. But we do tend to kind of lean more towards if there's a way we can standardize it and we're not sacrificing too much, then it's worth doing.
All right.
Things like conversations, like many sites don't have, blog comments turned on or discussion forums or whatever, but we found that, by including conversations and that whole model in the core, you're gonna ensure that those sites that do have those features turned on, they will work in the same way. And like you said a while back, Franz, you're gonna have fewer instances of sites where you inherit a site and you need to figure out how it works, and you're just completely scratching your head to trying to figure out how they implemented like basic user permissions or blog comments, because so much of that stuff is built in and works the same way.
All right, I think we've shared a lot in the past 40-50 minutes, right? And I thank you guys for all the time that we've spent during this session, and thank you for agreeing to be with me and do this interview. But let's do one last question, and this is more towards maybe some advice that maybe you can share, or maybe you'd like to share when it comes to software business or entrepreneurship or freelancing and stuff like that. You see, there's new programmers and people are taking up PHP, new people taking up PHP every day. And of course, they may start out freelancing, they may start out taking up jobs and whatnot, but I think a lot of people still do aspire to start a business with programming, with software and stuff like that. I don't know. From what I understand, Concrete5 to what it is today, it was not the actual plan when you started out Portland Labs in 2001, but it just happens to grow, and I think you do manage things very well, and it worked out really good. But if somebody is starting out, those who just started out programming and has a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit in them, what advice can you give them?
Just keep trying. Yeah, no, you're right, Dino. Like, you know, I'm sure we have made more mistakes than brilliant decisions. And I'm sure that we won't be the first entrepreneurs to tell you that, like, just keep going. You know, there is no such thing as a genius that just magically everything works out for them. There's no any of those stories where it's just like, oh, and then someone gave us $2 million and we became wildly successful. No, man, that's a PR trick. Like, everyone out here is working hard, and you know, develop your grit, and you'll do fine.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that, like, don't be afraid to change your mind. It's funny. I remember hearing these stories about Steve Jobs, where he was famously extremely rigid and would call ideas stupid, and I mean that's not a great quality, but and like very hard and fast, until all of a sudden sort of maybe the tipping point came and he realized, like, no, the people telling me this are actually right and my notion is wrong. And so don't waste any more time digging in after that point. Just be like, yeah, no, you're right. We're
Next.
So we've dealing with programmers. We've had many experiences where people have been telling us one thing for a while, and you know, once you realize that no, you know, your experience is that they're right about this one, and you might be right about another one, but they're right about this. Don't waste your time like trying to worry about how it looks to change your mind.
Yep, you don't need to be right. Just keep trucking.
Yeah.
You don't need to be right. All right. Thank you. That's a good one.
Well, thank you, Dino. This has been great.
Thanks to you guys too as well. Thank you for spending the time. I'm sure maybe I'll be bugging you guys again about anything else, probably Concrete5 or maybe not. And I'm looking forward to hear more about Lamberta, was it?
Lamberta.
All right.
All right.
All the best to that, and looking forward to hearing more about that. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thanks. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.